My boots make no sound.
Hello, my name is Erica and it is my 3-year anniversary learning the double bass. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about my journey over the past 3 years, some of the stuff I've learned, some of the challenges I've had, and I'm going to try and answer some of the questions that I would have had when I was first starting out. So hopefully you find this video useful and helpful and maybe insightful, and maybe you feel like we're in it together when you're having a bad day in the practice room. Just it's nice to know that somebody else is going through the same things with you. I know that by watching other people talk about their experiences, and as a beginner instrumentalist, that's kind of motivating for me. So the first question I'm going to answer is double bass hard to learn? And I know that lots of people want to know the answer to this because it's one of the most Googled questions about the double bass. And for me, it was not harder than any other instrument I've learned in the past. So there's just different things about the double bass that are difficult that you don't have to deal with with other instruments. So I guess just the sheer physicality of the instrument is quite challenging to build up enough stamina to get through even like a 15-minute practice session in the beginning versus a 3-set gig once you've got that sort of condition. So that's pretty difficult at the beginning, and it can be kind of hard to motivate yourself through those beginning phases. And the only thing I can say is make sure you have a teacher and a well set up instrument, because it'll make life a lot easier than trying to navigate those first steps alone, because there's kind of lots that can go wrong when you've got such a big instrument that requires so much kind of physical energy to play. So the thing that I found really difficult about playing the double bass, and harder than other instruments, was trying to sing and play at the same time. So I'm a vocalist, and my intention was always to accompany myself singing on the double bass, and trying to do both singing and playing bass was so much harder than accompanying myself on, say, guitar or an instrument, particularly an instrument with frets. So just the thing of having to hold down two competing melody lines, so the bass line and the vocal melody, which kind of counter each other both notes wise and rhythmically a lot of the time. That for me is difficult, and getting the intonation of both to be good is quite hard. So that's something I'm still working on, and I think I'll be working on that forever. So I'll talk a bit about my background to start with, because I didn't come to the double bass from zero musical experience like some people. So I've got a bit of a background which I guess made some things faster to pick up on the instrument, but it definitely felt like starting from scratch. So I have a degree in jazz and improvised voice, and I played a lot of guitar before I picked up the double bass, plus a little bit of mandolin and some ukulele too. So I don't have any experience being an electric bass player, which is the kind of common pathway for a lot of people moving from electric bass to double bass. So actually being the bass player and playing the bass role in a band was totally new to me, and it's been really good for my my improvising, just like with voice and with guitar as well, just having that kind of deeper knowledge of bass lines and chord harmony. So that's been really, really kind of good for me. I also am a music teacher, and so I've kind of got a bit of inside knowledge about how to teach and how to learn. So I guess I'm kind of a step ahead in that respect, that I can be my own teacher. But I also have been learning from a great double bass teacher, because it's definitely not something that I could tackle on my own. So I thought it would be good to start with what I have achieved after 3 years of practice. So start with some positive things. So I have played some gigs. I did my first gig probably 8 months after I started learning the bass, and it was a jazz gig at a kind of a family festival. And I set that as a goal for myself. I wasn't sure if I would get there and feel comfortable playing bass by that point, but I had a backup plan because my partner was playing bass at the gig, so we were going to swap for a set. That was the plan, and I made it. I did the gig, and it was not terrible. No one booed me off the stage, so I got through it. And then I played my first gig with, I guess, as a session player, probably 12 months after I started learning the bass. So I definitely found the pressure of playing somebody else's music a lot higher than doing the thing that I did after 8 months, which was kind of my own band. So the stakes are just higher when somebody else's name is on the line. I kind of feel a bit more comfortable taking risks for myself than I do taking risks for somebody else. So I also have joined a couple of community orchestras, and I joined the first one probably about 8 months into my bass journey, and that's been really, really fun and good for my sight reading, and just kind of great to be able to play with other bass players, because it's nice having that sense of playing in a section rather than when you're the only bass player on the gig. So it's a bit more exposed when you're the only bass player, but in a section you can kind of I found for myself anyway, in the community orchestra, I can sort of hide a little bit and kind of work to my own level. So even if that's just playing like crotchets instead of big kind of fast semiquaver lines, that's been really fun. And I remember the first rehearsal I went to for the community orchestra, I was just kind of watching the bars fly by. I couldn't really play much of the music, but once I took the music and practiced it in the lead up to the performance that we did, I was probably around about 50% of the music that I could actually play, which for me was pretty pretty exciting to be able to be playing that much music. And then just recently I did a concert with the same orchestra, and I was probably up to more like 80 to 90% able to play most of the music, and also starting to add in, I guess, some phrasing and musicality. So that felt really nice to be thinking about that sort of music musically, rather than just trying to like play the notes on the page. That's kind of 3 years of playing, doing some gigs. I also recorded an album which I released just a couple of weeks ago. So I wasn't intending to put any of my own double bass playing on that album at all, but I did some scratch tracks and they didn't sound too bad, so I did some more, and then suddenly the album was a big double bass feature. So I'll put a link to the album below, and you can have a listen to, I guess, my more polished studio playing. And there were definitely some drop-ins to fix up a bit of dodgy intonation and that kind of stuff, and doing a lot of takes before I was happy with what I came up with. That was kind of exciting to have felt comfortable to commit my playing to permanent record like that. I'll also put a link to a performance I did, just a little solo set in my house, so you can see, I guess, more a raw, unedited version, which is probably a pretty good indication of where my skills are at on the double bass at the moment. So those are the main things that I have achieved in my double bass career so far. The question that I think a lot of people want to know is how much to practice per day. So for me to get to this point, music is what I do for a job, so I have kind of the luxury of having a lot of practice time and not having to split my time between another job. But then I teach a lot of music, and that feels almost like another job, but it's still kind of music. So I feel like I'm practicing all the time. But in terms of time on the bass, I probably work to around 1 to 4 hours a day, most days of the week. That's what I'm kind of aiming for. Sometimes I'll do less. Sometimes I'll take a break for a couple of days to give myself a bit of a mental and physical break, which I'm always happy that I've taken a break. I never regret taking a break. So that's definitely something that I would recommend if you're kind of feeling a bit burnt out, but either physically or mentally. Just take a few days off. You're not going to lose too much by taking some time off the instrument. I don't know what that equates to over 3 years, but 1 to 4 hours a day most days. So it's a lot of practice, but there's still a lot of practice that I have yet to do. So I started with the Rabbath books, because my teacher is a Rabbath teacher, and working from book 1, and then we kind of introduced little bits and pieces from books 2 and 3 as the repertoire that I was working on kind of called for certain etudes or exercises. Probably a year and a half into my playing, I started looking at the Vance books, so it's kind of the wrong way around. I should have started with the Vance first. But I kind of, the Rabbath stuff I really like, and I would say if you're starting out, the Vance books are a really great place to start, especially looking at classical playing. I started looking at the Simandl books last year when we were locked down here in Australia during our 2020 we were kind of locked down for most of the year and couldn't really leave the house. So there was a lot of practice, and I kind of dived into Simandl, in particular the interval exercises, and they really, really helped my intonation and I guess just my kind of solidity in the different positions on the bass. So that was, I was having a lot of trouble, so that was kind of a big breakthrough moment for me, actually going through those Simandl exercises. And then the other things I work on are just kind of, I guess, improvising and composing and working on my own music. So I always try and bring a sense of improvisation and composition into my technical practice and my just general practice. So I don't know if I'll go into too much detail, but if you want some kind of, I guess, some ideas about the sort of things that I do, let me know. I always find it makes it more fun and makes it more musical when you're practicing music rather than just practicing an exercise. And I know I'm guilty of getting kind of bogged down in an etude or an exercise and feeling frustrated because things aren't really happening the way that I want them to happen. So sometimes you just need to get out of that mindset and into a more musical, creative headspace to release some of that tension. And yeah, tension is a big one for double bass, just trying to reduce tension as much as possible. One of my favourite practice tools actually for reducing tension is to use an egg timer. So just to set a timer, sometimes I do it for periods as short as 5 minutes or even like 60 seconds of just working on the one thing, because as I said, I can kind of get really bogged down in an exercise and trying so hard to make it sound good, and the harder you try, the worse it gets. So it is nice to sometimes set an egg timer for the 5 minutes and then have a minute break in between where you can just give your body a stretch and reflect on what you've done in that 5 minutes. And yeah, for me, that's much more productive practice than kind of like grinding something out for several hours and then not really feeling like you're that much better at the end of your session. I also play with a lot of drones. I like the Tonal Energy app and the Tempura apps. I've got one for Android and I know there's one for iPhone as well. There's another one called Drone Tone Tool, which is cello drones, and that one for me is just a bit too intense. It's kind of like cello sounds, and it makes me a bit stressed to practice to, so I tend not to use that drone app. Another app I really like is Drum Genius, which gives you just some nice drum grooves, which are kind of nicely recorded. They're not too MIDI sounding. And that was kind of fun, actually, working on the Simandl exercises to make it a bit more musical by putting Drum Genius on in the background. I know it's a bit not kind of the done thing to play Simandl with like some kind of a funk groove, but for me that made it a lot more palatable, those sort of grinding exercises. And then the other app I really like using is an app called Daily Art, which just gives you a painting or a piece of artwork every day, and I find that really useful for getting into the kind of musical and creative headspace. So I try and do a little bit of improvising every day, just kind of, I guess, meditating on the artwork and seeing where that takes me. But also if I'm working on a piece of music, I can kind of use the artwork as a focus to start thinking musically rather than technically about the piece of music. So yeah, I don't think I'll talk too much about that. I can maybe make another video about how I use that app, because it's been really helpful for me and helpful for a lot of my music students when I've introduced it to them as well. So some of the things that have helped me in my double bass journey are having a teacher, number one. There's no way I could have done this without a teacher. I don't know how anyone could learn the double bass without a teacher to start them off on the right foot. I also like to set goals for myself, and a lot of the time those goals are kind of like, I guess, gig performance related. So for me, having a set date booked in to work towards is really motivating, whether that's whether it's a gig or even just like a mental thing. Okay, I'm going to record a video of myself performing this piece on this date. That for me is really motivating to practice. I also find actually doing the performance, I always find that a gig is worth like 3 months of practice. You do the gig and suddenly your confidence is like really lifted and everything is easier, and you have a lot more, you have a greater ability to take risks and worry less about the small things because you're thinking of the music in a more I guess, macro sense. So yeah, gigging for me is a big one, which I know is really hard at the moment with COVID and everything being locked down. So that was hard for me last year, actually. I found that I was just kind of going through the practice motions for a lot of last year, and then one of my friends asked me if I wanted to do a little kind of like a video mashup with him, playing banjo and singing, and me playing double bass. And so that gave me a bit of my mojo back because I had a project to work towards. So yeah, I'll link to that video as well. It's kind of a fun one. We played a Leonard Cohen song together. The other thing that really helped me actually was getting a new bass. So I started learning on a Gliga, which is like a big kind of Romanian, quite a heavy instrument. And it was a really nice bass. It wasn't a cheap bass by any means, but just had some kind of weird wolf tones and harmonic issues that made it quite hard to play in tune. And I always had to work really hard, particularly with the bow, to get a nice sound out of the instrument. And, you know, like the strings would kind of, there's no fundamental to the tone, some like on the open strings. And then I upgraded to a J. Hade bass probably the end of 2019, and just immediately there's like so much more resonance, so much more projection in the instrument. I didn't have to work as hard, I was more relaxed, and everything became easier. So definitely helps to have the best instrument, I guess, that you can afford, and the best setup that you can get for the kind of music that you're playing. So the kind of, I guess, my current challenges, where I'm at after 3 years, the biggest one at the moment is vibrato. I'm really, my playing is really lacking in vibrato, and so that's on my kind of on my to practice list immediately, because it's something that I think I really need to bring into my playing to add some more kind of musicality. So yeah, I'm now at a point where I can do vibrato on both a down bow and an up bow. I couldn't do it on the up bow before, but it's just very inconsistent, and I can only do it on, you know, like long notes. I can't kind of add it in as a little bit of spice in the middle of a line. So yeah, vibrato is a big one, and I know that I need to work on it, because when I listen to my recordings, it's the thing that's missing in my playing that is going to make it kind of move up to that next level. The other thing I've been working on a little bit is improvising with the bow, which is pretty challenging. So just kind of having enough foresight and pre-planning to have enough bow for the ideas that you want to play. So yeah, that for me is a challenge, and just, I guess, working on as many different permeations of bow patterns as possible, so that you always you're never kind of out of ideas. You can always get yourself back to where you need to be on the bow. And then the other thing is just, I guess, intonation, the internal quest for intonation. And also now trying to add some musicality into my playing, because I'm a lot more confident in kind of shifting my way around the bass, and my intonation is a lot better than it was. So it's giving me a little bit more confidence to think musically and not get so distracted by dodgy intonation. So yeah, those are kind of the current things that I'm working on, and where I've found myself 3 years into playing the double bass. So I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, or you want me to talk a little bit more about any of the things, please let me know, and I'm happy to make some more videos kind of going into a bit more detail about some of the things that I like to work on, some of the things that have helped me. So if you have questions, comments, please let me know below. And I'll link to my social media, so you can, there's lots of videos of me playing, and if you scroll back far enough, you can see some videos of me playing right at the beginning, where I was, just trying to play out a C major scale. Thank you for watching, and have a lovely double bass day. Weightless.